Over the past few weeks, several treasure hunters have disappeared while exploring a dungeon reputed to house the most priceless treasures in the world. The only known survivor has returned with stories of monsters who eliminate anyone who dares enter the dungeon's halls and complex labyrinth of chambers. But authorities are not taking such reports seriously. "We have no rational explanation for these disappearances," one investigator reported. "All we know is that the brave soul who wants to claim these treasures had better be sharp. At this point, the only one I know who's clever enough for the job is Winky." That's right, it's all up to Winky now. No, I'm not making that up. Your character's name really is Winky, and that's the story of Venture. No, not Adventure, designed by Warren Robinett in 1980. That's an entirely different game, and we'll eventually get to it. Venture was initially developed in 1981 for the arcades by Exidy, and later ported to home consoles, including the Atari 2600. Okay, so we'll just get this out of the way first. Obviously, the arcade version, as well as the ColecoVision version, is going to be utterly superior to the Atari version in every way. But if you had an Atari, this is what you got. So you take up the mantle as Winky, an avid archer and brave treasure hunter who sets off to collect treasure from a cave full of evil monsters. What sets this game apart from most other Atari games is the fact that it takes place across multiple screens, multiple rooms, and even has something akin to an overworld screen. Let's call this the overworld. It's actually meant to represent a hallway view of the underground caves. The hallways lead to 4 separate rooms in the caves, each containing 1 treasure and a handful of monsters. You're Winky, represented by this little dot at the bottom of the screen. The object here is to move your little dot around the screen, avoiding these monsters that kind of look like space invaders, navigating your way to the nearest door for one of the 4 rooms. Despite the fact that Winky is a decorated archer and skilled treasure hunter, his one weakness is firing his bow and arrow in a hallway full of monsters. You can't fire in the hallway view, so don't even try. You just can't. Your only play here is to avoid the monsters entirely. I can't tell if the monsters have any sort of logical AI to them on this screen or if they're just in a random pattern, but they're not too difficult to avoid for the most part. Navigate Winky to one of these holes representing doorways to one of the aforementioned rooms, and Winky will enter the room. Now the view changes to a full screen view of the room you just entered. Take a moment to process that. Most Atari games take place on 1, maybe 2 screens. Here you've got several rooms to move through, each being different, so even with the primitive graphics, use your imagination here and pretend you're a kid in the early 80s. It really makes you feel like you're just tooling around some caves looking for treasure. That's actually pretty cool. One of the rooms has no monsters and instead has these moving wall traps. You enter the room and now you've got multiple monsters to deal with, as well as a treasure off in the corner that you have to collect. One hit from any of the monsters here or in the hallways and you're dead, but you do have 3 lives as a backup. Now there's a couple of ways to deal with this. You can shoot the monsters right away and go off to collect the treasure. But if you shoot the monsters first, you don't get any points. So if you're going for a high score, you'll actually want to try avoiding the monsters first, grab the treasure, then shoot the monsters on your way back to the exit. Also adding to the challenge is that even after the monsters are dead, they can still kill you if you touch their carcasses. Their bodies don't disappear right away either, so if it's a tight corner, you'll have to think about where and when you decide to shoot a monster so you have enough room to get around. However, the fun doesn't stop there, because if you linger in one of these rooms for too long, one of the hallway monsters gets impatient and comes charging into the room after you. And even though you're in the room, your puny arrows are totally useless against the mighty hallway monster, so you better just run for your life or you'll lose your Winky. This part is very similar to Evil Otto chasing you down in Berserk when you linger in a room for too long, and for that matter, Winky kinda looks like Evil Otto. Also, when the hallway monster chases you, it sounds like your ship engines in Star Master. But it makes for some white-knuckle escapes depending on where you're at in the room when the hallway monster shows up. If you're going for a high score, or if you're just having a hard time navigating around the monsters, you may want to leave the room and come back to reset the clock on when the hallway monster shows up. As long as you haven't collected the treasure, you can re-enter a room, but once you've already collected the treasure, the door is sealed and you can't go back inside. Keep working your way through the hallways, collecting treasures and murdering monsters, racking up your score if you can, and if you manage to collect the treasures from all 4 rooms, you get to go to a whole new set of hallways with a whole new set of rooms. Whoa, now that's actually pretty cool for an Atari game. Okay, so the Atari version only had 2 hallway levels, while the arcade version actually had a 3rd level, and if you beat level 2, it just loops back to the 1st level again. Atari gamers got hosed on the 3rd level, but still, this is impressive for the time and the hardware. I also have to applaud the detail on the monsters here. You've got snakes, snakes, two-headed monsters, the robot from Lost in Space, maybe? Alright, some of these are an incomprehensible hodgepodge of pixels, but at least they tried, okay? You've also got 4 difficulty levels, which, instead of using the game select switch, are dictated by what order you put the difficulty A and B switches in on your console. Overall, this game is actually relatively fun, and it's something totally different from your usual Atari fare. Obviously, if you have a ColecoVision, that's the version you should seek out, but if not, the Atari version is really cheap, like maybe a couple of bucks, and totally worth seeking out to add to your collection. What did you think? Did you play Venture growing up in the arcades or maybe at home? If you're interested in more Atari games, here's a playlist with all of my other Atari 2600 content that you might enjoy. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.